Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is June 24th, 2025. And the top story this morning is the Iran-Israel-U.S. three-way ceasefire, or at least the uneasy ceasefire that happened yesterday. I guess you could say peace could break out at any moment here. So what happened? A lot has happened since we talked. Yesterday on the stream, we talked about the U.S. attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities and the three possible retaliations from the Iran. We talked about how homegrown terror cells was or terror cells operating in the U.S., sleeper cells maybe was the biggest fear on people's minds. After that was the Strait of Hormuz, which would drive up oil prices, and then the least of which would have been retaliations against U.S. bases in the region. And well, we got that margarine of retaliations yesterday, if you will. Shortly around noon Eastern time yesterday, news started to break that the Iranian military had sent ballistic missiles at a U.S. base in Qatar. 6 missiles were fired. 1 missile got through and made impact. There were no casualties. And then it turns out right away, the oil market started to sell off on this news. And a lot of people were scratching their heads. WTF, what's going on here? Why is oil down on an Iranian attack on the U.S. military? Well, the point was that was kind of like hey, at least it's not the Strait of Hormuz trade. That's what was going on yesterday. Uh, Oil sniffed out right away that this was scripted military theater. That's really what happened here. The Iranians warned the United States what they were going to hit in advance. We've seen this before. This is what the Iranians did when they retaliated for the Soleimani assassination. They warned us what they were going to hit and when so we could get our people out of the way. They sent 6 missiles. We shot down 5 of them. We let 1 get through and it hit the ground. And then the Iranians are like, yeah, big win, big counterattack. Now we can talk peace. And so because this was like the least bad of all of the options, the oil market immediately started celebrating. Oil prices dropped from $74 all the way down to about $65 in a span of 6 hours. It was a very rapid sell-off in oil futures. Shortly after the big sell-off, we found out that the U.S., Iran, and Israel had all agreed to a ceasefire. And then, of course, as is keeping with the Iranian-Israeli tradition, that ceasefire was immediately violated. By who first, of course, is up for debate. I'm sure the Iranians say it was the Israelis. I'm sure the Israelis say it was the Iranians. Point being, they did what they always do, and they kept shooting at each other. Within hours, a missile was fired from Iran. The Iranians dispute this. The Israelis had to retaliate. President Trump this morning was getting quite vocal, trying to convince the Israelis not to retaliate. He was on Truth Social in all caps, as he's prone to do, saying those planes better turn around. Don't drop those bombs. I'm not happy with Israel. I'm not happy with Iran. He let slip an expletive rant outside the White House. He basically said, look, they've been fighting for so hard and for so long that they don't know what the F they're doing. I'm not sure who he was talking about saying they don't know what the F they're doing. I'm sure he was talking about both the Iranians and the Israelis. Ultimately, the Israelis ended up retaliating for the Iranian missile. They hit a radar station this morning and they're like, okay, now we're done. Ceasefire back on. So I guess it's over. I don't, hey, good war, everybody. Good job, everybody. Really well handled. I guess we'll same time next week. Murph, I think it's your turn to bring donuts next week. I know your tricks. You're not getting out of this one. Kind of silly, all of it. It literally was scripted military theater, this Iranian retaliation. But hey, they needed to do something. They needed to lob a missile, something that goes kablooey, so they could save face. And then when there was a little bit of a ceasefire violation, we don't know who it was. The Iranians decided, or the Israelis decided they needed to save a little face too, so they blew up a radar. For now, it looks like we're done. Emphasis for now. Maybe we're done here. The market seems to think we're done. The market is risk on this morning. We've got stocks are up. We've got oil is down. We've got bonds down a little bit. We've got gold is down. We've got Bitcoin is up. Risk on in markets. Now that that's behind us, that's silly exercise, the war of the month. Now we can all go back to that other geopolitical CF that we've all been worrying about, the trade war. Who remembers the trade war? That's right, Liberation Day, the tariffs. Remember that silly exercise? That never went away. There's an article in Bloomberg this morning talking about how, hey guys, we're 2 weeks away from Trump's self-imposed deadline, and we've really only got trade deals with the UK and with China. And even that last one, that deal with China, I mean, that could blow up at any moment, as it already has several times. And so there's a lot of countries out there that still don't have any deals with the US. There's no real reason to suspect any sudden breakthroughs. So we've got a little bit of brinksmanship is going on here. We're starting to see container traffic is rising on the West Coast here. A lot of inbound cargo ships coming in from Asia. Companies are starting to front run those tariffs again, even though tariffs are currently at 10%. It looks like we're going back to possibly the Liberation Day levels, unless maybe they're going to say after 2 weeks, oh, at least we're negotiating in good faith. And so we're going to give another 90-day extension. That's the taco trade. We might see that again. But that seems like for the next few weeks, that's probably going to dominate the airwaves. We also got an interesting story pertaining to the job market this morning. This is pretty interesting. Career Builder and Monster.com. You guys remember Monster.com, like the first of the big like job placement websites? Well, they started a joint venture about last year. This private equity firm owns both of them. They just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Career Builder and Monster both. So, is this a strong job market? Is this a strong labor market? Okay, Monster.com, not really the forefront of technology and job placement, right? Indeed and LinkedIn kind of eating their lunch here. But at the very least, if we really had a good, strong labor market, we wouldn't be seeing companies like this going Chapter 11. So once again, I think there is still trouble brewing in the job market. The jobs that are available, they're kind of BS jobs. They're not very well paying. There's a lot of part-time work, a lot of gig work, not a lot of full-time, well-paying jobs out there available. And it's starting to show in some of these consumption numbers. Now, meanwhile, we've also got a commercial real estate crisis. That one is still lingering in the background. Remember that whole big game of the floor is price discovery? Well, we might get a little bit of price discovery here. We've got Deutsche Pfandbriefbank. I had to practice saying that one a couple of times. By the way, who can spell Deutsche Pfandbriefbank? 100 million melon coins to whoever gets it right first in the comments. Well, Deutsche Pfandbriefbank is selling their $5 billion portfolio of U.S. commercial real estate loans. The talking point they're saying volatility is poison. They don't like U.S. economic policy. And so they are going to dump that $5 billion loan book at any cost. They're saying they're going to take a hit on their earnings in doing so. They're going to either securitize it, direct sales, just write down the losses. Either way, Deutsche Pfandbrief is getting out of U.S. commercial real estate. Good luck to you finding a buyer for those. We've also got 2 million student loan borrowers are about to have their wages garnished this month. That's data that's available this morning. Remember the whole student loan forgiveness, not forgiveness thing? Yep, that is still out there as well. A lot of people are about to see their credit reports start to take a dive. A lot of people are going to have less money available to go out and consume, probably not going to help with those GDP numbers. And last but not least, we have got robo-taxis on the streets of Atlanta this morning. Both Waymo and Uber are the latest to add autonomous vehicle services on the streets of a U.S. city. Like it or not, guys, the robo-taxis are coming and they are available in more and more places. We got a lot to talk about this morning. Why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what is happening in these markets. And hey, don't forget, hit that like button and that subscribe button if you're new here so you can come on back and have your coffee with the melon heads, because we do this every morning, whether Jack is on vacation or not. And right now, the S&P 500, well, it's doing all right here. We're up by about 40, what are we up? 43 points, 0.72% higher for the S&P 500, back above 6,000. Within striking distance, we're within about 100 points of an all-time high here. Stocks are liking this little ceasefire we have going on. Meanwhile, the Dow is up 279 points, about 2/3 of 1% higher this morning. And the NASDAQ is leading the way higher, up nearly 1%, 216 points in the green for the NASDAQ. So stocks are loving this news this morning. We do have a weaker dollar, probably adding to some of that upward movement in stocks here. 98.09 for the Dixie. That's off by about 30 points. Meanwhile, we've got the bond market here. Let's see, the yields are a little bit higher. Remember, guys, yields moving higher. That's bond prices moving lower. So we've got a little bit of sell-off in bonds to go with the buying in stocks. That is your hallmark of a risk-on market here. The 30-year Treasury yield is up by 5 basis points, 4.909. The 10 years at 4.354. That's up 3.5 points. The 2 years at 3.851, up 2 points and change. And the 1 month is actually down a point here at 4.142. Pay attention to that 1 month over the next couple of days, guys. I'm starting to see a lot more talking points from some of these Fed governors becoming increasingly supportive of July rate cuts. It's still a long shot there, but we may be seeing those rates come down in July. Now, looking over at the commodities board here, we've got gold is taking it on the chin this morning. Spot gold is at $3,317, down by $51.63 here this morning, 1.5% lower for gold. The front month August gold futures contract is down $63, almost 2% lower there. So risk on market here. That means some selling in gold. We're seeing silver is joining in. Spot silver's at $35.96, back under 36 here. 14 cents lower, or 0.4% to the downside, but I still like the shiny. Meanwhile, copper is up by 0.8%. Platinum is up about 1%. Palladium is off by 0.2. And look at oil here, $66.20. This was almost $75 this time yesterday. What a move oil has made. Down $2.32 more this morning, or 3.3%. Now take a look at this chart. This is hourly candles of the oil chart here, guys. So, all right, we're going all the way back. What are we looking at here? Here's Thursday night. We saw a little bit of spike in oil prices. They came down through the day Friday. And then, of course, we had the bombing over the weekend. So oil futures jumped up a little bit on Sunday night. There was that little spike up after the bombing, and everybody started to worry about the Iranian counterattack. And it wasn't coming, so oil started to sell off a little bit. And then we had the counterattack on that base in Qatar, and everybody said, well, it's not the Strait of Hormuz, and down goes Fraser. Oil sells off almost $10 in 6 hours, pretty much right to where we are now, sitting here hovering back in the mid-60s, which is where we were right before this conflict broke out. So oil just did a $10 round trip here. It was over before it started. Meanwhile, Bitcoin actually had a pretty good day yesterday. Again, the market went risk on just as soon as that Iranian counterattack was over. Bitcoin back at $105,340. Now, over the weekend, Bitcoin had dipped down to about 98,000. It was selling off on this news of this conflict between the U.S. and Iran, and then it rallies in response here. So we're sitting back right in the mid 100s again for Bitcoin. Now, Trump was pretty vocal this morning. We had this one going on in Bloomberg. Trump tells Israel to stop dropping bombs to save Iran truce. Well, it's a little bit late for that, I'm afraid, because they ended up dropping the bombs. They dropped it on a radar station, and then they said, we're done now. President Donald Trump called on Israel to stop dropping bombs on Iran, calling it a major violation of a fragile ceasefire between the two countries. He announced just hours ago. Here's his all caps on Truth Social. Do not drop those bombs. If you do, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Trump was voicing his displeasure with all parties involved here. Israel said a missile had been fired by the Islamic Republic, accusing it of breaching the truce. I mean, we've been at peace for almost an hour here, guys. Somebody fire something, am I right? Jesus. Iran has denied firing the missiles at its longtime rival, according to state-run IRIB news agency. Now, a lot of people are starting to wonder on X here if Iran is saying, no, we definitely didn't fire that missile, but a missile clearly landed. Worried about maybe rogue IRGC commanders. There have been so many decapitation strikes against Iranian leadership. Maybe a little bit of somebody maybe pulled the trigger who wasn't supposed to there, just decided they didn't want peace and fired the missile anyway. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but for whatever reason, a missile fired after the ceasefire went into effect. Trump expressed frustration with Israel on Tuesday, suggesting that their response to the Iranian missile was disproportionate. I'm not happy with Israel for going out there. It was one rocket, the president said. These guys got to calm down. Trump added, I'm not happy with Iran either. The fragile truce followed an extraordinary night in which Tehran retaliated against a U.S. attack over the weekend by launching missiles at an American airbase in Qatar. The Islamic Republic's move was telegraphed, with Qatar and the U.S. being forewarned, and there were no casualties. Once again, guys, the war was basically scripted at that point. It's telling us what they're going to hit and when they're going to hit it so we can get our people out of the way so there's no casualties and no need to retaliate. So we got that going on for us. And then, moments later, we got this one on First Squawk. Israeli media, citing security sources, says the matter has concluded and a ceasefire between Israel and Iran has taken effect. So this is now the second ceasefire in 12 hours. We'll see if this one holds. And we got that going for us. Now on to the next, geopolitical CF. Pressure to seal Trump trade deals ramps up with just 2 weeks to go. There's that 2 weeks again, the lady from Total Recall. 2 weeks from President Donald Trump's self-imposed deadline to reach a deal with the U.S.'s major trading partners, some of the most watched talks aimed at clinching agreements to avoid higher tariffs are struggling to get over the finish line. There's a lot at stake here. As of July 9th, exporting nations without a bilateral accord in place will face Trump's so-called Liberation Day tariffs that are much higher than the current baseline 10% level applied to most countries. Only the UK has secured something on paper, though that pact kept the 10% so-called reciprocal rate in place and left unresolved one of Britain's pain points, 25% steel duties. On a separate track is China, which has a fragile truce with the U.S. that extends into mid-August to give time for negotiations to play out. Countries engaged in what Washington views as productive discussions may get their deadline extended. Court challenges to Trump's legal authority for tariffs have provided an added element of uncertainty for companies that have spent the past 10 weeks either front-loading orders or hoping his threats of higher import taxes are just a negotiating tactic. And, that's that taco trade there. And, a lot of people are front-running those tariffs here. We're getting this one also this morning in Bloomberg. Number of U.S.-bound container ships rises on the Pacific horizon. People are cramming in that inventory before the tariffs go up again, just like they did back in March. The busiest U.S. maritime complex looks to get an increase in container cargo in the next couple of weeks as businesses race to stockpile ahead of global tariffs that President Donald Trump has threatened to increase. But whether it'll be an important wave or merely a ripple is unclear. On Saturday, 68 container ships were recorded to be on the way to the neighboring ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. That is the most since January, when importers were initially scrambling to beat the incoming president's promised levies. So that could see another big sudden spike in imports, which of course would drive GDP numbers lower. We get some volatility in those Atlanta Fed GDP Now numbers. They were all over the place in the first quarter because of this very phenomenon. So we don't really know what these tariffs are going to look like, but companies are not taking their chances. They're buying up that inventory just in case they go up. And of course, I'm sure tariffs are playing a role in the job market as well. And maybe this was a long time coming, but it can't be a good signal for the labor market. Career builder and monster venture said to consider bankruptcy. This one was a couple of days ago, I would point out. A joint venture involving Career Builder and Monster, the early pioneers of online job hunting, is working with advisors on a potential bankruptcy filing, according to people familiar with the situation. The private equity-backed entity is working with Alex Partners for operational advice and Latham & Watkins for legal counsel, according to people who weren't authorized to discuss the matter publicly, but I bet you they were familiar with that matter, weren't they? Career Builder and Monster both launched during the 1990s and popularized online job searching just as internet use was going mainstream. Their appeal dwindled as more robust networking platforms like LinkedIn and Recruit Holdings Indeed.com moved to the forefront, further eroding their popularity. Most marquee corporations have their own portals that potential employees can browse. The two companies were rolled into a joint venture last year. Private equity firm Apollo Global Management has a controlling stake, while staffing agency Randstad is a minority shareholder, according to a disclosure. A representative for Apollo declined to comment. Moody's Ratings had cut Career Builder to C from CA in May, citing its weak liquidity, negative cash flow, and declining sales. Revenue fell to $49.2 million in 2024, a roughly 40% drop from the prior year, the credit grader said. The company can no longer defer its cash interest payment this year, putting additional pressure on its liquidity. And it also has a $132 million term loan that matures in July of next year, Moody's said. And so this was a few days ago. They were talking about how they were said to consider bankruptcy, and we got confirmation this morning. Shout out to Arcade Consultants on X who put this one out here. Career Builder LLC files Chapter 11 bankruptcy. This just happened this morning. They filed in the District of Delaware with assets of $50 to $100 million and liabilities of 100 to 500 million. So again, the job market is so strong that Monster.com is going out of business. Meanwhile, let's not forget about that commercial real estate industry as well. And the game of the floor is price discovery. German property bank to exit $4.6 billion. That's actually 4.6 billion euros. It's about $5 billion of a U.S. loan book and issues a profit warning. A German commercial real estate lending bank plans to exit its almost $5 billion portfolio, announcing that it is willing to take a loss for the year to escape what it has characterized as a poisonous volatility of U.S. economic policy. Poisonous volatility. Who had that on their 2020s bingo card? Deutsche Pfandbriefbank will discontinue its U.S. business and either wind down, securitize, or sell its $4.6 billion portfolio. It announced this week. The bank said it now intends to fully focus on Europe. Remember, guys, Europe is on a spending bender, lowering rates, printing money, all about spending more money on defense. You've also got the Swiss National Bank just took rates back to zero over in Switzerland. So they're getting out of the U.S. commercial real estate market where we still haven't had any real price discovery. Although $5 billion worth of loans going up for sale, that's a little bit of price discovery there, isn't it? I wonder who's going to buy it. Most likely our pension funds. And just as soon as this article refreshes, we can talk all about what is going on in... Oh, come on, Wall Street Journal. What are you doing to me here? All right, we're having some issues with the Wall Street Journal. So please allow me to summarize what this article is supposed to be telling us. The Wall Street Journal is saying this morning that 2 million student loan borrowers are going to have their wages garnished starting this month, and that there's another 2 million just behind them in August who are going to have their wages garnished. Because remember, millions of people had not been paying their student loans for several years. And lo and behold, not paying your bills has consequences eventually. It took long enough. But 2 million people having their wages garnished, that means they're going to go log into their, try to take money out of the ATM. It's going to get declined. They're going to try to use their debit card. It's going to get declined. They're probably going to end up leaning more heavily onto buy now, pay later. We talked about yesterday how BNPL was going to get reported to the credit agencies. So American consumers, in particular, young American consumers, have a tough road ahead of them here. And it's just a shame Wall Street Journal does not seem... Oh, there it is. Okay. Nearly 2 million student loan borrowers are at risk of doc pay this summer. Let me just give you some of the numbers here because there was some important details in here. Let's see. I lost my highlighted paragraph too. Oh, where was it? Here we go. And besides the 2 million here, let's see, roughly 6 million student loan borrowers are 90 days or more past due after the pandemic era reprieve ended. That's according to TransUnion. The credit reporting company estimates that about a third of them, nearly 2 million borrowers, could move into default in July, and then they would start having their pay docked by the government. That's up from 1.2 million that TransUnion had estimated in early May. So these numbers are getting worse, not better. An additional 1 million borrowers are on track to default by August, followed by another 2 million in September, who will fall into default when they are 270 days past due. You guys get the picture here. People are not paying their freaking bills when it comes to student loans. And, you can't do that forever. Sooner or later, the government's just going to reach in and take that stuff right out of your paycheck, guys. That is how that works. That's how loans work. They call it a loan because you pay it back when you're done. Otherwise, they'd call it a gift. They'd call them student gifts. But they weren't gifts. They were loans. All right, last one, guys. We've got Uber and Waymo will begin driverless ride-hailing service in Atlanta. Robotaxis coming to a street near you. Uber Technologies on Tuesday will begin offering its customers driverless Waymo rides in Atlanta, making it the second market after Austin, where the two companies are teaming up instead of competing against each other. That is, assuming protesters don't burn the cars like they did in California. Dozens of Waymo robotaxis will service 65 square miles of Atlanta, Uber said, including from downtown to Buckhead and to Capitol View. With plans to expand in the future, Uber had told riders in April they can increase their chances of getting an autonomous vehicle or an AV By indicating their preference in the Uber app, users will always have the option to accept a driverless ride or to switch to a human-operated car before a car is dispatched to them, the company said. Atlanta is poised to become a competitive market in the AV space. Uber's rival Lyft is expected to launch an autonomous ride-hailing service with safety operators on board in partnership with Toyota Motor-backed May Mobility Inc. as soon as this summer. Amazon's Zoox Inc. has also been testing its driverless technology in the city's downtown area. And of course, Tesla is also moving forward with their own robo-taxi service. Guys, driverless cars, they are here. They're not going away, like it or not. That is officially going to be a thing for the foreseeable future. And guys, that is about all we got for this morning. Look, it's been kind of a crazy couple of days. Scripted wars, missiles being fired, people being told what's going to be hit, when it's going to be hit. Get your people out of the way. I mean, if you're sitting here wondering all of this crap, what's the point? Why even bother having a war if you're going to do it this way? Well, I share your confusion. I really don't see the point of any of it. I don't get why. Uh, Look, I'm no fan of the Iranian regime or the Ayatollahs. They're global sponsors of terrorism. I wish they would just go away and just get over it. At the same time, I'm no big fan of what our CIA and what the Mossad has done all over the world. They use people like pawns on a chessboard. They wreak death and destruction everywhere they go. But if you're going to tell everybody what you're going to hit, when you're going to hit, so the cameras can catch it and nobody gets hurt, then just don't do it to begin with. What a concept. I just throw it out there, guys. Like, I mean, why bother if you're going to do it that way? I mean, I'm glad nobody was hurt. I'm glad there were no casualties, but I can't help but wonder, WTF is the point? And Robert feeds the machine. Thank you, Robert, for feeding the machine with your support of the channel. I appreciate that. He said they can't garnish your wages if you get paid in fart coin. Oh, now we're thinking outside the box. Yeah, fart coin. Yeah, tell me how bad we need rate cuts. We really need more dovish monetary policy if fart coin is still running. I mean, I don't check fart coin's price daily. I just don't do it. But by the way, guys, the people behind Fartcoin, it's not even real. I mean, the guy who's pumping Fartcoin, the guy on this what the heck was it called? That stupid AI chatbot that was pumping Fartcoin and Goatcoin. He's not even using his real name. I mean, the guy's cashing in, making himself a whole bunch of money. Whatever, guys, play with all coins at your own risk. That's all I can say. Crypto winter is coming, and I'm going to go out on a limb here. All right, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say Fartcoin probably not going to do so well through crypto winter. Not the most bold prediction I've ever made on this channel. But look, guys, it's one reason I just don't mess with altcoins. I like Bitcoin. I buy Bitcoin on the regular. I park it in cold storage, and I don't mess with it. I don't try to trade it. All that being said, remember, winter is just around the horizon. Sometime between now and October, we're probably going to see a pretty wicked sell-off in Bitcoin. So be careful if you are borrowing money or going out on margin to buy Bitcoin. Thank you, Robert Feeds the Machine, for supporting the channel. And thank you, everybody, for having your coffee with the Melonheads this morning. Shout out to my magnanimous Melonheads on Patreon and YouTube. Thank you, guys, for supporting the channel. You rock. Links down below to all that good stuff, should you feel so inclined. By the way, for my Patreon and YouTube magnanimous Melonheads, we're going to do the Zoom call on Sunday evening again this week, like we did a few weeks ago, because I will be on vacation still on Friday, so we won't be doing our regular time for the Zoom call. I'll post a link a little bit later this week, but let's plan on doing that Sunday night, as we often do. Don't forget that like button and that subscribe button on the way out. Also, hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. And everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.